In 1996, a widow paid $600 for a quarter-acre nobody wanted at a county tax auction. 30 years later, a $22 million bottling plant couldn't open without her signature. The call came into Silvercreek Bottling's Denver office at 6:40 in the morning. Mitchell Voss picked up before the second ring. It was legal. We have a problem. Mitchell had spent 11 years building water-intensive plants across 3 states. He didn't rattle easily. He was rattled now. The augmentation plan just got rejected. The whole project's on hold. On hold because of what? A water right. Quarter-acre parcel. Decreed in 1948. Silence. Who owns it? A woman named Eleanor Larkin. Buy her out. Today. She's not selling. And Mitchell, she's not new to this. She's held that right for 30 years. $22 million. Sitting still. Because of a stock pond nobody had looked at twice since Eisenhower was president. And a woman who'd known this call was coming since before some of the engineers on the project were born. Her name was Eleanor Larkin. Everyone called her Nell. And it started, of all places, at a tax lien auction almost nobody bothered to attend. October 1996. Redfield County Courthouse. Basement annex. 11 folding chairs. 4 of them filled. The county was auctioning off parcels seized for unpaid taxes, mostly scrub lots and old right-of-ways nobody wanted. Warren Pruitt, the county treasurer, ran through them fast, half-bored. Parcel 14, quarter-acre, Section 9. Old stock pond, decreed water right attached. 9 years of back taxes. Opening bid, $250. Nobody moved. Warren smirked. $250 for a mud hole with a piece of paper attached. Anybody? A hand went up near the back. Nell Larkin, 58 years old, in her husband's old barn coat. $250 to the lady in the back. A voice from the second row. 3. Nell didn't turn around. $400. A ripple went through the room. Warren looked at her like she'd misheard. $400, ma'am. For a dead pond. I heard you the first time. $425, the second row said. $600, Nell said. The room went quiet enough to hear the ceiling fan. Warren laughed. Not cruel, just genuinely amused. Some folks collect stamps, Mrs. Larkin. Looks like you collect mud holes. A couple of people laughed along with him. Nell never looked up from the form. She signed it, folded her copy, and put it in her coat pocket. Because unlike everyone else in that basement, she knew exactly what she'd just bought. To understand why Eleanor Larkin paid $600 for a dried-up stock pond, you have to go back 2 years, to the Redfield County Library's map room. Nell had a habit nobody in her family fully understood. Every few weeks she drove into town and read water court records, decree books, diligence filings, old irrigation company minutes from the 1940s. Her husband Walter called it her courthouse hobby. Nell called it paying attention. One afternoon in 1994, she found a decree that made her stop turning pages. A 1948 stock water right adjudicated for a quarter-acre parcel along an old rail spur, a small pond, dug for watering cattle before the rail line was pulled up in the 60s. Priority date, April 1947. She didn't know much about water law yet, but she'd read enough decree books by then to understand one thing. In a fully appropriated basin, an old priority date isn't a formality. It's the whole ballgame. The older the right, the later it gets shut off when a dry summer forces the water court to start cutting people from the river. That night she sat at the kitchen table and drew the parcel by hand. The rail bed, the pond, the open range around it. Most of that range had sat empty for decades. Cheap, flat, unwanted. She stared at the drawing a long time. Then she called her sister, who still ranched nearby. You know that stretch out past the Section 9 crossing? Sure, nothing out there. Not yet, Nell said. For the next 2 years, she watched. Survey stakes went up along the old rail bed in '95. A drilling rig showed up for 2 days that August, then vanished. By early '96, a company out of Colorado Springs had quietly assembled nearly 400 acres through 3 separate holding companies. She wrote every purchase down in a spiral notebook Walter had given her for Christmas. He asked her once what she was tracking. A pattern, she said. What kind of pattern? The kind that takes a while to see. By the time the tax auction notice ran that fall, Nell already knew 2 things nobody else in that basement knew. She knew the land being assembled around the old rail bed would need a guaranteed senior water supply before it was worth anything to an industrial buyer. And she knew the only right in the whole basin old enough to guarantee it, the only one that wouldn't go dry the first bad summer, was sitting in a stack of unpaid tax parcels with an opening bid of $250. Nell drove home from the courthouse with the deed on the passenger seat. Walter was waiting on the porch. "Well, we got it. And now what?" Nell thought about it. "Now we wait." Walter had known her 31 years. He knew the difference between Nell guessing and Nell certain. This was certain. "How long?" he asked. "However long it takes." He nodded, went inside, and put the kettle on. They barely mentioned the pond again for years. Nell kept it up the way she kept up everything, without fuss. She ran a handful of cattle through it every season, enough to satisfy what the water court called continued beneficial use. She filed her diligence paperwork on time. She paid the $9 annual assessment every January, same week, without fail. To everyone else, it was a mud hole behind a fence line. To Nell, it was unfinished business. The first offer came in 2003. A land agent from Colorado Springs, sharp suit, city shoes not built for gravel. He offered $8,000, more than 10 times what she'd paid. Nell smiled politely, not interested. "The number can move. I imagine it can," Nell said, and closed the door. Walter had heard it all from the kitchen. "8,000? Mm-hmm. That's real money, Nell." "It is. And you said no." "I did." He let it go. He never brought up the 8,000 again. More years passed. In 2011, the county itself offered 16,000, wanting to fold the pond into a drainage easement. Nell thanked them and declined. "Mind if I ask why?" The county engineer said. "It isn't time yet." Time for what? She didn't answer that one either. Then in 2019, Silvercreek Bottling came in person for the first time. Not an agent, a real estate director in a rental sedan, offering $45,000. Nell poured him coffee, let him make his pitch, and looked at him over the rim of her cup when he finished. "Tell them patience isn't something they can outbid." He left with the same folder he'd walked in with. That night, Nell opened her notebook and wrote the date, the number, and 3 words. Not yet. Wait. Between 1996 and 2025, Nell turned down 6 separate offers. Not because she was stubborn, because she understood something none of the buyers did. The pond was never worth what they were offering. It was worth what they'd eventually need. And in the spring of 2026, they finally needed it. Silvercreek Bottling broke ground on a $22 million plant that April, 400 acres east of the old railbed, exactly where Nell had watched the surveyors 30 years before. Most of the county saw jobs and progress. Nell saw a permitting process. Her son Daniel had become a water rights attorney in Denver, the kind of work Nell had half-jokingly steered him toward as a teenager, back when she used to bring him along to the courthouse map room. She called him that week. "I need you to look at something." "What kind of something?" "An augmentation plan. Public filing." A pause on the line. "Mom, is this the pond? You remember, you used to make me read the decree with you when I was 13. You said someday it would matter." Nell looked out toward the fence line. "Someday's here." Daniel drove down that weekend. He laid the augmentation plan across the kitchen table, next to the original 1996 tax deed, next to Nell's notebook. 30 years of offers, dates, and 3-word refusals. He read for a long time. Then he looked up. "Mom, their whole plant depends on senior water they don't have. And this," he tapped the decree, "this is the only right in the basin old enough to cover it." "I know. Do they know you own it?" Nell leaned back in her chair. "They're about to." 3 weeks later, the water court referee flagged Silvercreek's augmentation plan. Insufficient senior water to guarantee supply during a call on the river. Their engineers scrambled. It took 9 days to trace the 1948 decree back to a name, Eleanor Larkin. The call came on a Thursday morning. Nell was drinking coffee on the porch when the phone rang. Colorado Springs number, one she didn't recognize. She let it ring twice before answering. "Mrs. Larkin, my name is Mitchell Voss. I'm with Silvercreek Bottling. I'd like to talk to you about your water right." Nell said nothing. "We're prepared to offer $200,000. Cash, closing within 30 days. Nell set her cup down. 200,000 for a right she'd bought for 600. I appreciate the call, she finally said. Mitchell exhaled, relieved. So you'll consider it. It means what I said. I appreciate the call. She hung up. She called Daniel right away. They offered 200,000. What'd you say? I hung up. Daniel was quiet a second. What do you want, Mom? Nell looked out past the porch rail, toward the fence line she'd walked for 30 years. I don't want to sell it. Then what? I want what it's worth, not what they're offering, what it's worth to them. Daniel took a breath. Then I need to make some calls. Silvercreek Bottling was about to learn the difference between a purchase price and a permanent problem. Daniel had practiced water law for 9 years. He called Mitchell Voss the next morning. I represent Eleanor Larkin on the Section 9 water right. Mitchell sounded confident. 200,000 is more than generous. Pull up your augmentation plan, Daniel said. Your entire plant depends on senior water you don't have. That right is worth what you need it for, not what's convenient for you to pay. My mother isn't selling it. Mitchell sighed. Everyone has a price. She wants terms. A permanent lease, $5,200 a month, adjusted for inflation. Transferable to her heirs. Silence on the line. Silvercreek went quiet for 2 weeks. Then Mitchell called back with a counter. $2,800 a month, capped at a 10-year term. Daniel relayed it to Nell. She listened, then said 4 words. Tell him no. Final. 2 weeks after that, Silvercreek's lawyers filed a challenge in water court, arguing the right had been abandoned. No meaningful use in decades, they claimed, just a few head of cattle as a formality. Daniel spread 30 years of diligence filings across the table. Every affidavit filed on time, without exception. Every January assessment paid to the dollar. They're arguing abandonment, he told Nell, against a right with a perfect paper trail. They just handed us the case. Nell reached into an old cigar box on the shelf and pulled out a folded sheet, a copy of the original 1948 decree, made the year she'd found it in the library. Daniel stared at it. You kept this. Since 1994, 32 years. She'd been carrying the answer the whole time. The hearing was short. Silvercreek's attorney argued non-use. Daniel laid out 3 things. The 1948 decree, 30 consecutive years of diligence filings, and $9 a year in water assessments paid without a single gap. You cannot claim abandonment, he told the referee, against a right that's been actively maintained, taxed, and used every single year for 3 decades. The referee reviewed the filings, looked at Silvercreek's counsel, and asked one question. Do you dispute the diligence record? He hesitated. No. Then the right stands. Application denied. Silvercreek called Daniel that same afternoon. Mitchell sounded different now, less confident, more urgent. Our client will accept your mother's terms. $5,200 a month, permanent lease, adjusted for inflation, transferable to her heirs. Agreed. Daniel called Nell right away. They accepted. Every term. She was quiet a moment. Every term? Every term. Another pause. Then Nell said one word. 9. What? My yearly assessment. $9 a year. For 30 years. Now it's worth $62,400. Every year. For as long as that plant runs. 3 weeks later, the lease was filed at the county clerk's office. Nell drove there herself, filed it in person, and drove home. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table, opened the old spiral notebook Walter had given her decades earlier, turned to the last blank page, and wrote one line. April 2026. Done. Warren Pruitt, the county treasurer who'd laughed at her bid in that basement 30 years before, read about the settlement in the county paper. He didn't laugh this time. Nell never found out he'd read it. She wouldn't have cared if she had. She'd paid $600 for a quarter-acre of mud. 30 years later, it paid her back every single month for the rest of her life. She never bragged about it, never called the paper herself, never needed to. Warren always said some folks collect stamps. Turns out Nell was collecting patience the whole time. If you respect people who think ahead, stay quiet, and win in the end, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you have taken the $200,000 or waited for the monthly lease? I'll see you in the next story.